Alcoholism and addiction in general are no respecter of individuals. They don't care how many people you have depending on you. They don't care what your title is or your status in life. They don't care if you're rich or poor. If you think that you are above the reach of addiction, you are sadly mistaken. Hi, I'm Gina. Here at Hope and Cope, we talk about essential skills we need to have our best life possible in spite of the painful and sometimes even tragic events and situations brought on by those we love. Stay to the end and I will share with you one of the only documented causes of recovery from addiction that I'm aware of. Some people are predisposed to alcoholism. They have not discovered a gene, an alcoholic gene, but they do know, it's very clear and obvious that alcoholism and addiction runs in families. So it has been deemed a disease, but unfortunately people can cause addiction in themselves just by prolonged use of a drug or alcohol. Once a person has introduced alcohol or drugs into their life, no matter how infrequent and recreational it might be, the problem or a problem that can occur is if a life event occurs, a severe life event occurs that they really have a difficult time coping with. If they turn to that drug to ease that comfort, that in itself can cause addiction, because now we want that to numb the pain that we're in, and then people only exacerbate their problems because they had this terrible life event, a divorce, the loss of a loved one, etc., the loss of a job, and now they're compounding it with alcohol use, abuse, or alcoholism. If you are watching this to find out more because you love someone that you think has a problem with alcohol, I want to let you know as early in this video as possible that it's very likely you are not the answer to their problems. I know that's a challenge for those of us that love our person with a problem and we want to do all that we can to rescue them, but the overwhelming school of thought on the matter is they need to be in the hands of professionals and or like-minded people. So that is why AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, has had such success, because it's one alcoholic helping another. Usually the sober family members or the family members that don't have the problem of over drinking, they can manage their drug use. They are typically not going to be the people that alcoholic receives genuine recovery with, because we don't really know how to address it like another person that's been through what they've been through. And that's the person that can really meet them where they are and address the matters that are hidden underneath the drug use or the alcohol use and help them to recover from those problems. So that is why I started this channel. I lived for years with my husband's alcoholism, and we had not had that issue in our home before. And so I had to learn on the fly as we go how to cope and how to manage and how to keep my own sanity. And so I started this channel because I know there's other people like me out there. I know there are people that are desperate for some information, desperate for some hope, desperate for some direction about how to manage in spite of someone else's alcoholism. I never fail to turn people to a recovery group called Al-Anon. It is for the friends and family members of those with addiction. It helps people learn how to turn inwardly and focus on themselves and recover themselves from someone else's addiction. A saying with Al-Anon, and it is just so true, that it's a family disease. We all get sick. We might have one person in the family that is using or abusing alcohol or another drug, but it affects all of us mentally. And so whether it's through this channel or finding yourself a great Al-Anon group or a combination of that and prayer and church and other support, anywhere you can get it, I am here to help you manage your life and make it the best life it can be in spite of the situation with this channel. You may be in a situation where you are reeling right now from someone else's addiction, and it might be hard to hear this, but each of us is responsible for ourselves. So we might want to blame, and it might really be someone else's problem or somebody else's fault, but we have to turn inwardly and be responsible for the way we handle things, for the way we proceed with our own life. We can't rescue them. We can pray for them and we can hope the best for them and we can point them to recovery. But we can't rescue them. We can't make someone else do what we want them to do. But we are responsible for our own decisions. And of course, if you have children in your home, you are responsible for your children, but you are most certainly responsible for your own reactions to these situations. And that is why I'm here. I want to help you discover positive ways, encouraging ways to manage your life while someone else is figuring out their own. Another thing I'd like for you to know about alcoholism or addiction is that abstinence is not the same as recovery, and sobriety may not necessarily indicate recovery, but they are all different things. So if someone just wants to gut it out and force themselves to not drink, or we can manage a situation to where we can prevent it for a season, it's possible that that season of abstinence can bring some clarity, and maybe that person will be in a better state of mind and be able to make healthier choices moving forward. But a person that just wants to grit their teeth and gut it out and just try their best not to drink or not to use drugs is not necessarily in any form recovering from their addiction. They really need the help that they can get from trained professionals or other people that have been where they are. When someone chooses recovery, what you need to also know is that relapse is a very common part of recovery. I know of a few people that went to their very first rehab and never used again. And that is amazing, because I do think most people end up in recovery, relapse multiple times. And that was certainly the case with my spouse. He went into various rehabs multiple times, and really, it helped with a sense of sobriety, but not recovery, because I know it didn't bring recovery with my husband, because once he would be out of a rehab, he couldn't stay sober. So those of you that have been with me for a while know that my husband is a quadriplegic and had a drunk driving accident the very next day after he got out of his last rehab. He had been at that rehab 6 months in-house and 3 to 6 months living in a halfway house. And when he finally came home, the very next day, he drove drunk and broke his neck. So I don't have a lot of personal experience with recovery through rehab, but certainly I feel like that those rehabs extended his life. They gave us time for him to have the opportunity for recovery. There were many times that had he not been put in inpatient recovery, he probably was at death's door, probably was very close to being at the end of his life, the way that he drank so much to excess. Which brings me to the next topic. There, as many different people as there are with addiction, there's probably that many different facets to addiction. It can look so different for so many people. My experience with my husband is he was a dysfunctional alcoholic. When he drank, that's all he did. I know there are people that can drink every day and still be highly productive in their field of career, and they manage both together. Maybe they never have those blackout times or those binge times, but that was not our case. So there's just so many different ways that people can be addicted and be in harm's way with drugs and alcohol. So I am going to put in the description box a link to 20 questions to ask about your or someone else's drug or alcohol use, to see if it falls in that range of being in addiction. When someone is an addict, they cannot, in my opinion, they cannot tell the truth. They don't know what the truth is. Everything in their mind is skewed, and they may honestly be trying to tell the truth, but it does not mean it's based in any reality. So you need to know, if you are naive, as I was for probably at least a full year, maybe longer, very naive. I went from a husband that never lied to me, never deceived me, so far as I know, to someone that couldn't tell the truth to save his soul. So that was really, really a challenge for me, is realizing that, meaning to or not, I could not depend on anything that he said. If he said he was going to help, I couldn't depend on that. If he said he would be there, I couldn't depend on that. If he said he would be sober when I got home from work, I could not depend on that. And it really was probably not his fault, because at that point he was very much overtaken by the addiction. He was a slave to the addiction, and he did not have the control to follow through on anything he said, no matter how sincere he was when he said it. But I do want you to know, because it's important, that almost always with addiction comes all kinds of other vices. They may not have been in that person's life prior to the addiction, but they will more than likely poke up their ugly heads during addiction. So if they weren't prone to other unbearable behavior, they very well now in addiction will be. Very prone to outbursts of anger, pornography, stealing, arguing, blaming, all kinds of other unfortunate characteristics come along with addiction. Something I did not know when my husband started using, once I discovered what was going on, we went into the first rehab, something I did not understand is that addiction is progressive. It almost never, I don't want to act like the end all of information on the topic, because like I said, as many different people as you may know that have ever had an addiction, that's how many different facets there are to the topic of addiction. But for the most part, addiction is very progressive. Someone may have a situation that they're managing quite well at one point, and then it just, I give it a year, 2 years, 3 years, and that person is not managing like they were in the past with the addiction. It just grows. Sometimes other drugs are added, and like I said, other unhealthy behaviors are added. So, if you have somebody and you're like, well, when he parties, he really parties hard, and he has takes all weekend to recover, but it's a good thing we only party like this a couple times a year. That very well can creep into a much more serious situation. And I just wish I had known when my husband first started in his alcoholism. I wish I had had the recovery that I had in Al-Anon. I wish I'd started right away. I went as soon as somebody told me about it, but it was already like 2 or 3 or 4 years into my husband's addiction. And I wish I had the recovery that I had needed, and I wish I had known that it was progressive, because I expected it to just be what it was. I didn't expect it to just snowball and get worse and worse and worse, and for him to lose his ability to manage his job, and his career, and him lose his business. All those things I didn't foresee right away, because I didn't realize it was such a progressive condition. And for him, it was extremely progressive. So he went from, everything was wrecked in about a year and a half. Pretty fell apart in about a year and a half. And I know that's not the case for some people. I know some people go 20 years and they manage this a little bit crazy, insane lifestyle, but it stays manageable. They don't lose their car. They don't have drunk driving accident. They don't lose their job. It's a little bit unpleasant, and they're a little bit unpredictable. They spend too much money on alcohol. Maybe they don't come home once in a while, but it's just somewhere in this realm of functionality, and it just wasn't like that in our situation. So, as I said in the beginning, I know of only one real solution to addiction that's been documented. As far as I know, in the big book of AA, there were cases early on that were proven that if a person had a spiritual experience, a genuine spiritual experience, that they were able to, by the grace of God, be set free from their addiction almost immediately. Most of them just almost immediately. And this was a phenomenon that was catching on. And so that's how AA originally started trying to form recovery around a spiritual experience. And so that's what all the 12 steps are for, is to walk somebody systematically through this incremental process of finding a spiritual experience that they can have for themselves and be set free from addiction. Now, we know that it's not the 100% cure. How many millions of people have probably sat in AA meetings or read the big book and not found that recovery? But again, that's just as personal and individual as the addiction itself, as the individual itself. A person has to be able to be real with themselves. They have to be able to get down into the muck of what is in their heart and what is preventing them from being free. They have to be able to forgive themselves. They have to be able to set other people free and not have bitterness and resentment against past hurts. So there's a lot of work in a spiritual experience, and unfortunately, some people just can't embrace it like others. Those that have a genuine spiritual experience and they get a sense of forgiveness from God and a renewed sense of purpose, that gives them the hope to then dive in to a world of recovery, a world of working through their problems, a world of peeling away those layers and coming to grips with the vices in their life and setting those things aside and turning those things over to God and receiving forgiveness and giving forgiveness. And it is a process, and it's probably a lifelong process that anybody has to go through if they struggle with an addiction in their life. So, do you know a lot about alcoholism, unfortunately? Do you have some things that I missed in this video that you would like for people to know about addiction that you feel like would be helpful? Feel free to leave that in the comments below. Thank you for your time. I always appreciate it. I have another video lined up after this one that I hope will be helpful to you. But before you go, check out the description box where I put my contact information, a Bible verse, and a Christian song for you. If you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate if you give it a thumbs up and share it with a friend. I put out contact every Sunday, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye-bye.